Hey kids, it's me, Baron Creepy Von Pasta, and I hope you enjoy this special. See if you can guess us all. So, yeah. Sweet dreams. Out of the Box. Written by Bo Bandy. Once the final apocalypse began, as opposed to several previously overhyped minor apocalypses, being dead or alive offered no real distinction. Both metabolic states were up and walking around, to varying degrees. Those who were still breathing just smelled a little better. Well, usually. Once this dual state of being became much more commonplace in society, the terminology of the day shifted from living and dead to a much more accurate description of biologically active versus inactive. The disco virus, as it soon became known, arrived a little later on. It was first affected in inactive members of society, but rapidly spread over the living population for a double whammy. The debilitating disease manifested itself in ways that drove its victims to madness. It caused all infected individuals to repeat older pop culture catchphrases or lyrics incessantly, to the exclusion of all else. It was theorized that unknown elements present in the atmosphere, as well as the advanced age and predisposition to Alzheimer's disease for the inactive victims, contributed significantly to the dead-end, irreversible condition. No one could say for sure, though, with full authority. It was academic. We were a land of living and not living beings. If a deceased body happened to be present when an older song or popular catchphrase was uttered in casual conversation, they became trapped in a verbal repeating loop. If you think witnessing a rotting corpse sauntering around aimlessly would be distasteful or unpleasant, imagine them also croaking out the old Wendy's slogan, "Where's the beef?" constantly. It's rather jarring. There are plenty of living souls who can't carry a tune, but the biologically inactive don't even try to sing in key. They just gargle it out like a bad taste in their festering mouths. Once the contagious crossover germ occurred in the dead to the living, an intense anger rose from the affected population. Eventually, the infected became so consumed with rage from being unable to stop repeating song choruses and annoying TV jingles that many people committed suicide outright. Either that, or they took innocent victims along with them, as collateral damage, in their involuntary karaoke murder sprees. Naturally, the downward spiral of disco mental infection and death grew exponentially. In a stunning example of what the inept legislative branch of the government could do when they weren't bickering or pointing fingers, they passed the Out of the Box Act, forbidding morticians, coroners, and other medical professionals from playing older music or television programs while examining the deceased. By then, it was too little too late to insist the dead be safely enclosed within a coffin or morgue drawer. The damage was already done, and everyone left was going to pay the ugly price for not thinking outside of the proverbial box to start with. "Ooh, honey, you're the one that I want," growled a listless, staggering corpse, 5 steps behind me. Despite the very hoarse, cringe-worthy rendition, I recognized the Grease musical from Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta right away. No one seemed amused by all the unintentionally hilarious songs or phrases which the infected were now fixated upon. Either no one made the ironic connections, or they were too preoccupied trying to avoid catching the deadly disease to have a belly laugh. "Get away from me," I shouted at my unwelcome shadow. "Go on, go away." It's not like he was going to relent or actually leave me alone, but it made me feel better to tell him off anyway. Another inactive soul in a side alley sought to corner me from the east, as I fled from my rear pursuer. "It's the end of the world as we know it," she gurgled through a mouthful of blackened teeth and matted hair. I did my best to avoid finishing the catchy REM chorus in case that's how the infection starts. Regardless, "I feel fine" still echoed in my head. Suddenly, I had 2 of the 4 directions blocked by the infected dead roaming the neighborhood, as they chanted mindless mantras. It was starting to feel like I was being corralled, like 2 cunning wolves pushing their prey towards an unseen ambush in the woods. I tried not to listen to the intertwining chorus of repetition from either of them, lest I succumb to the madness and join in. Instead, I plunged my fingers deep into my ear canals to block out the incessant droning. I trudged on in artificial silence. Up ahead, a significant gathering of the biologically inactive awaited me. I was right about my suspicions. Those moderately paced rascals behind me were pushing me towards an undead trap of some sort. The continuous rambling of the crowd was a discordant roar. Holy crap, I gasped in rising alarm. There were a lot of them. It wasn't going to be easy to get through a horde of that size. Typically, they aren't very fast, but with that many clustered together, the risks go way up. At first, I couldn't make out any of their disco virus repetitive phrases. I was too busy planning my retreat. As they approached, I couldn't help but focus on one of the louder individuals who seemed to be leading the pack. A tall corpse in a Hitler-esque mustache was out in front repeating, "It keeps going and going and going." Hearing the Energizer Bunny commercial catchphrase might have been amusing under different circumstances, but I was trying to evade dozens of slack-jawed corpses. Another slurred loudly, "Don't stop till you get enough." For mindless random catchphrases and worn-out pop song lyrical hooks from yesteryear, uttered by zombies, it was starting to feel like there was some real organization involved. My concern was raised even more as the individual voices I overheard with the death cult portrayed an intelligent, related theme in their speech. It felt like I'd been lulled into a false sense of security. My mental superiority of being alive didn't feel very secure at the moment. Those rotting ghouls before me might have been locked into saying the same thing over and over, but it was no coincidence that they repeated their mantras. And, in turn, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Panic set in. Rapidly, the horde circled my position until I was trapped with no clear means of escape. A single thought filled my worried mind, and my verbal center triggered my tongue to speak. First, I was afraid. I was petrified. If you think witnessing a rotting corpse sauntering around aimlessly would be distasteful or unpleasant, imagine them croaking out the old Wendy's slogan, "Where's the beef?" Constantly.